Hi, Reddit. I'm Jake, 32. It happened late at night. I was half asleep when I heard a muffled groan from the other side of the bed. At first, I thought Melissa was having a bad dream, but then she gasped, clutching her stomach. Jake, her voice was strained, barely above a whisper. I sat up immediately. What's wrong? She curled into herself, her entire body trembling. It hurts. Oh my God, it hurts so much. My heart started pounding. I turned on the bedside lamp and saw her face contorted in pain, sweat glistening on her forehead. I jumped out of bed and grabbed my phone. I'm calling an ambulance. The ride to the hospital was a blur. I held her hand the entire way, whispering reassurances even though I had no idea what was happening. By the time we arrived, Melissa could barely keep her eyes open. The nurses rushed her into a room, attaching monitors and inserting in 4. I paced the waiting area, running my hands through my hair, trying to stay calm. A doctor finally approached me after what felt like forever. She's stable for now, he said. We're running tests, but we need to keep her for observation. Do you know what's wrong? I asked. He hesitated. We're not sure yet. Melissa spent the next 3 days in the hospital. Her pain came and went in waves. Sometimes she seemed fine. Other times she was curled up in agony. They ran scans, took blood, ruled out appendicitis, ulcers, and kidney stones. Nothing explains the severity of her pain, the doctor admitted. I stayed by her side, sleeping in the uncomfortable chair next to her bed. I brought her books, her favorite snacks, though she barely ate, and did everything I could to make her comfortable. She'd squeeze my hand and whisper, "Thank you for being here." "Of course," I'd say. Where else would I be? By the 4th day, the pain had lessened, though Melissa still felt weak. A nurse came in with a clipboard. "Looks like your test results are clear," she said with a reassuring smile. "The doctor will be by soon to discuss your discharge." Melissa looked relieved. Finally, I should have been relieved too. But something about this whole thing didn't sit right. That evening, just before she was discharged, the doctor came in to check on her one last time. But it wasn't the same doctor we'd been seeing for the past few days. This one was younger, confident, with a warm smile. "Melissa," he greeted, his tone familiar. "How are we feeling today?" She smiled, a little too brightly for someone who had spent the last few days in pain. "I'm much better now," she said. The way she said it made something in my stomach twist. That was the first time I heard his name. Melissa was finally coming home. After 4 days in the hospital, she was exhausted but relieved. I helped her into the car, adjusting the seat so she could recline comfortably. "You okay?" I asked as I pulled out of the hospital parking lot. She sighed, leaning her head back. "Yeah, just tired." That made sense. She'd been through a lot, and all I wanted was to get her home so she could rest. The doctor still hadn't given us a clear explanation of what had caused her pain, but as long as she was feeling better, that's what mattered. The first few days at home were slow. I took time off work to help her recover, making sure she had everything she needed. At first, she was in bed most of the time, resting, watching TV, occasionally reading. I cooked her favorite meals, but she barely touched them, claiming her stomach was still sensitive. "Maybe my body's just adjusting," she said with a small smile. I nodded, trusting what she said, but something felt off. Melissa wasn't acting sick. She was acting delicate. She moved carefully, as if she wanted to remind me she was still weak. She spoke softer, looked at me with those tired eyes, always seeming a little too grateful when I did something for her. "Jake, you're amazing," she whispered one night as I adjusted her pillow. "You don't have to thank me," I said. "You're my wife. Taking care of you is the least I can do." She smiled but didn't say anything, just looked at me for a moment, as if she wanted to say something else. Then she turned away. By the end of the first week, she seemed to be doing much better. The pain was almost gone, and she was moving around more. You're finally looking like yourself again, I said one morning as she sat at the kitchen table, sipping tea. She smiled. I actually feel pretty good today. That's great. Maybe we can go out for a little walk later. She hesitated. I don't know. Maybe I should just take it easy a little longer. Melissa, you've been taking it easy for over a week, I said gently. A short walk could be good for you. She tapped her fingers on the mug, looking down. I should probably check with Dr. Harris first. The name made me pause. Dr. Harris. It wasn't weird for her to trust her doctor's advice, but something about the way she said it, as if his opinion mattered more than mine. Didn't he already say you were fine to go home? I asked. Yeah, but he told me to listen to my body, she said. And I think I should be careful. I didn't push. If she wanted to be cautious, that was her choice. But as I got up to clear the table, I caught her glancing at her phone, then quickly putting it face down. Something in my gut twisted. A few days later, Melissa had a follow-up appointment. She insisted on going alone. You don't have to wait around for me, she said as she put on her coat. I don't mind, I said. I can drive you. She shook her head. It's just a quick checkup. I'll be fine. Again, nothing about this was outright suspicious, but it felt wrong. Melissa had never minded me coming to her doctor's appointments before. In fact, she usually liked having me there for support. That evening, I asked how the appointment went. She gave a vague answer. It was good. Nothing to worry about. I waited for her to say more, but she just smiled and went back to her book. What did they say about your symptoms? I pressed. They're still not sure what caused it, she said. But Dr. Harris said it's probably just stress. He suggested I take it easy for a while longer. Dr. Harris. Again. Something about the way she said his name made my stomach twist. The next morning, I had to go back to work after almost 2 weeks of being home. Melissa was finally well enough to manage on her own, and I needed to catch up on everything I'd missed. Call me if you need anything, I told her before I left. She smiled and kissed my cheek. I will. I should have felt relieved. But as I walked out the door, something nagged at me. That afternoon, I texted her. Me? Hey, how's your day going? No response. I figured she was sleeping or watching TV, so I let it go. But later, as I was wrapping up at work, I checked my phone again. Still no reply. Melissa always texted back, even if it was just a short, I'm good. I called her. No answer. I left work early, telling myself I was overreacting. Maybe she was just asleep. Maybe she was taking a bath. But when I got home, her car was gone. That wasn't like her. Melissa barely left the house since she'd been home from the hospital. If she needed anything, she usually asked me to pick it up. I called her again. This time she answered. Hey, she said, sounding off. Where are you? I asked. She hesitated. Just out for a bit. I frowned. You didn't tell me you were going anywhere. I didn't think I needed to, she said lightly. I just needed some air. That should have made sense. But something in my gut told me she wasn't telling me the full story. That night, she seemed completely normal. She laughed at a show we were watching, cuddled up next to me on the couch like nothing was wrong. But when she got up to go to bed, I noticed something. Her phone buzzed, and she glanced at the screen before quickly turning it over. That wasn't like her. Melissa never hid her phone from me. I didn't say anything. Not yet. But later that night, while she was asleep, I reached for her phone. My hands were shaking as I unlocked it. I scrolled through her recent calls. Dr. Harris. I stared at the name. Then I checked the messages. And what I saw made my stomach drop. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might break through my chest. Melissa had been texting Dr. Harris constantly. I scrolled through the messages, my hands shaking. Some of them were casual, but others felt too personal. Melissa, thank you for today. I feel so much better after talking to you. Dr. Harris, of course. You know I'm always here for you. Melissa, I don't know what I'd do without you. My throat tightened. This wasn't just a doctor checking on his patient. This was something else. I kept scrolling. More messages. Some from weeks ago. Some from just that afternoon when she had gone out for air. Melissa, I wish I could see you again soon. Dr. Harris, you know where to find me. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. She had seen him today. I put her phone back where I found it, my mind racing. I wanted to wake her up, demand an explanation, but I forced myself to stay calm. If I confronted her now, she'd lie. She'd gaslight me. Tell me I was being paranoid. No. I needed undeniable proof. I needed to know exactly what was going on between them. The next morning, I acted like nothing was wrong. Melissa woke up, stretched, and smiled at me. Morning. I forced a smile back. Morning. She had no idea that I knew. As she got ready for the day, I casually asked, "Any plans today?" She shook her head. "Just resting." Liar. I went to work like usual, but instead of focusing on my job, I was formulating a plan. At lunch, I called Kevin, my best friend and the only person I trusted with something this big. "Kev, I need your help," I said. "It's about Melissa." He listened as I explained everything. Her mysterious illness, the text, the weird connection with Dr. Harris. There was a long silence before he finally said, "Dude, you think she's cheating?" "I don't know," I admitted, "but I need to find out." That afternoon, I left work early and drove straight to the hospital. I didn't go inside. I just parked across the street and waited. If she was really at home resting, then I was just being paranoid. But if she showed up here, 30 minutes passed, an hour. Then, at exactly 3:45 p.m., I saw her car pull into the parking lot. My stomach dropped. She got out, adjusting her coat, then glanced around as if checking if anyone was watching. Then she walked inside. She lied to me. I gripped the steering wheel, debating what to do. Should I follow her? Walk in and catch her in the act? No. I needed more. I grabbed my phone and called Kevin. "She's at the hospital," I said, my voice tight. "Shit," he muttered. "You want me to come?" "No," I said. "Not yet. But I need you on standby." I sat in my car, waiting. Minutes dragged into an hour. I watched as doctors and nurses came and went, but no sign of Melissa. Then, at 5:10 p.m., I saw her. She walked out of the hospital, her hair slightly messy, her cheeks flushed. And right behind her was Dr. Harris. I grabbed my phone and snapped a photo as they stood by her car, talking closely. She laughed at something he said, then touched his arm. I felt physically sick. Melissa drove home, completely unaware that I had seen everything. When I walked into the house, she was in the kitchen making tea. She smiled like nothing had happened. "How was your day?" she asked. I forced my voice to stay even. "Same as always." "How about you?" She stretched. "Oh, just a lazy day." Lie. "You didn't go anywhere?" I asked casually. She hesitated, just for a second, but I caught it. "Nope, just rested." I clenched my fists. I wanted to call her out right then and there. I wanted to throw the photo on the table and demand the truth. But I wasn't done yet. I needed to know why. Why would she fake an illness just to keep going back to the hospital? What exactly was she doing with Dr. Harris? I needed a direct confession, and I knew exactly how to get it. That night, when she was asleep, I went through her phone again. I took screenshots of every message and sent them to myself. I also found emails. She had been emailing Dr. Harris, too. "Melissa, Jake is so sweet, but he just doesn't understand me the way you do. Dr. Harris, you don't have to explain yourself to me. You deserve to be happy." I gritted my teeth. It was worse than I thought. The next day, I set my plan into motion. I called Kevin. "I'm confronting her tonight," I said. "I need you here." He didn't hesitate. I'll be there. That evening, I got home early. Melissa was curled up on the couch, watching TV like everything was fine. I sat down across from her, my hands resting on my knees. "We need to talk," I said. She glanced up, confused. "About what?" I took out my phone, opened the screenshots, and slid it across the table. "About this." Her face drained of color as she picked up the phone. She scrolled through the messages, her hands shaking. "Jake, don't." I cut her off. "Just tell me the truth. Are you cheating on me with Dr. Harris?" Tears welled in her eyes. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" I demanded. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. And in that silence, I knew she had no excuse, no way out. I had caught her, and now I was done. Melissa sat frozen, my phone still clutched in her trembling hands. Her face was pale, her lips slightly parted like she was trying to find the right words. But there weren't any. I waited, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I wanted to hear her say it, to admit what she'd done. "Well," I pressed. Tears welled up in her eyes. "Jake, please, just let me explain." I leaned back, crossing my arms. "Go ahead. Explain why you've been sneaking around with your doctor. Explain why you lied about being home yesterday. Explain all of it." She took a shaky breath, setting my phone down on the coffee table. Her hands fidgeted in her lap. "I never meant for this to happen." I clenched my jaw. "That's what they all say." She flinched. "Jake, it wasn't like I went looking for this. It just happened." I scoffed. "Right. So you just accidentally started sending flirty texts? Accidentally started lying to me." Her tears spilled over. "I was miserable, Jake. I felt invisible. You were always so focused on work, on responsibilities, on everything but me. And then I got sick, and for the first time in years, someone actually paid attention to me." I stared at her, stunned. "Are you serious right now?" She wiped her face, her voice cracking. "Dr. Harris was just there for me. He listened. He cared. And, yes, I started to like the attention. I won't lie about that. But I didn't plan this, Jake. I swear." I inhaled sharply, trying to keep my temper in check. "You're telling me you accidentally developed feelings for your doctor? Accidentally hid it from me for months? Come on, Melissa. Just admit it. You wanted this." She shook her head violently. "No, I didn't." I slammed my hand against the table, making her jump. "Then what the hell do you call this?" I grabbed my phone and scrolled through her messages again, reading them aloud. "Melissa, I wish I could see you again soon. Dr. Harris, you know where to find me. Melissa, Jake is so sweet, but he just doesn't understand me the way you do." Her shoulders shook as she sobbed, but I wasn't moved. "You were playing sick just to keep going back to him, weren't you?" My voice was cold. She didn't answer. That was all the confirmation I needed. I stood up, pacing the room. "Unbelievable," I muttered. "I spent weeks worrying about you, taking care of you, losing sleep over you. And the whole time, you were using it as an excuse to see him." Melissa buried her face in her hands. "I didn't think it would go this far." I let out a bitter laugh. "But it did. And now here we are." She lifted her head, her tear-streaked face desperate. "Jake, please. I still love you." I stared at her, my stomach twisting. "Love," I repeated, shaking my head. "You don't love me, Melissa. You just love the security I give you." A long silence stretched between us. Then I took a deep breath and said the words I never thought I'd say. "I want a divorce." Melissa gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "No, Jake. No. Please, we can fix this. We can go to therapy. We can..." I shook my head. "There's no fixing this. You broke my trust, Melissa. You broke us." She lunged forward, grabbing my hands. We can get past this. You and I, we've been through so much together. I pulled away, my voice steady. And this is where it ends. Melissa sobbed harder, pleading with me. She swore she'd end things with Dr. Harris. She promised she'd never lie to me again. But it was too late. I was done. I grabbed my coat and keys. I'm staying at Kevin's tonight. When I come back tomorrow, I want you to have a plan for moving out. She broke down completely, collapsing onto the couch as I walked out the door. That night at Kevin's, I told him everything. Dude, he muttered, shaking his head. That's insane. I took a deep breath, rubbing my temples. Yeah, it is. He exhaled sharply. You did the right thing, though. You deserve better than that. For the first time that night, I felt something close to relief. The next morning, I went back to the house. Melissa had barely slept. She looked like a wreck, but I didn't care. I'll give you a month to move out, I said, keeping my tone firm. I won't be cruel about it, but I will be done with this marriage. She nodded weakly. Okay, that was it. No more arguing, no more pleading. Just acceptance. The divorce process moved quickly. I didn't want anything from her. I just wanted to be free. A few weeks later, I heard through mutual friends that Dr. Harris had resigned from the hospital. Apparently, he had a history of getting too close to his patients. I wasn't even surprised. Months passed. The first few were rough, but eventually I started to feel like myself again. I went back to the gym, spent more time with friends, focused on my career, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. One night, as I was sitting on my balcony, Kevin called. Dude, how are you feeling? I thought about it for a second, then smiled. Better than ever. And I meant it. This chapter of my life was over, and I was finally ready to start a new one